All right, I think we're live. Quorum being present, this meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission shall come to order. The commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority for the commission is derived from municipal code of the city of Annapolis, chapter 21, section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve sites, structures, and districts of historic, cultural, archaeological, and architectural significance. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in chapter 21, section 8.06. The HPC operates pursuant to the State of Maryland Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed between or amongst commissioners outside the public hearing to determine the disposition of any application. Thank you all for joining us this evening. That's our call to order on the first item on the agenda. The second item on the agenda is the roll call. Bill Williams, just say present. Unmute yourself and say present.
Oh, he was there?
He's muted at the moment. Okay, Will Scott.
Present.
Kim Finch.
Present.
I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Bobby Collins.
Present.
Tim Leahy, I serve as the chair. We also have with us this evening the Chief of Historic Preservation, Roberta Laynor. And we may see John Tower, who is the Assistant Chief of Historic Preservation. We also have the City Attorney, who's our liaison. We have Joel Braithwaite with us, and Cheryl Wood, who is also with us in her capacity as liaison to the commission. The commission is authorized to require an oath in order to testify, and this is done en masse. This includes applicants, staff, consultants, professionals, or members of the public who seek to enter their comments regarding any application that will be heard at this public meeting. If you intend to testify, please indicate so by raising your right hand and affirm with me. Do you affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony given and the statements you shall make are true to the best of your information,
No.
knowledge, and belief?
No. Spot no.
So you can, if your camera's not on, just unmute yourself and say, yes, I do.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do. Yes,
Very
I
good.
do.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right. Next on the agenda is announcements. Any announcements from Roberta or any other commissioners?
I don't have any.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. There was an error on the agenda, by the way, that we approved the minutes on September 8th and September 24th in our prior meeting, so that we don't need to approve those.
That would explain why they looked familiar.
Exactly. And next item on the agenda is violations. So first, Roberta, will you update us on any violations, and then we'll talk to Joelle.
I will just mention one new violation in the 100 block of Charles Street, and that is where we discovered masonry repointing underway. There was no historic preservation application submitted, and unfortunately the work is about 90% complete. It is not according to our standards. The applicant has submitted an application, so we are working on abatement.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Certainly.
How do you abate something like that? That seems like a difficult task. What are some of the recommendations that you would make?
Well, it is possible with very gentle cleaning standards that some of the mortar that has smeared over onto the brick could be removed. But as far as the actual repointing that is within the mortar joint, it would cause more damage to try to remove that.
Thank you.
Roberta, would a soda blast actually work on that situation?
I'm sorry, Bill, what's the question?
Would soda blasting actually, people refer to sandblasting, it's soda blasting.
Yes.
It's used to remove things like adhesive.
Sometimes that is done, and sometimes walnuts, ground walnuts are used.
Wow.
They're a little more abrasive.
We have to work on what the formula was to begin with.
Okay. Joelle, would you like to give us an update on what has happened at Dean Street? Still on mute there.
Oh,
There we go.
okay. Thank you. Today we had a municipal infraction matter at the district court. The defendant didn't come to court today, and we were able to get a fine. And this is for a case of over 18 months ago. We noted that there were vinyl window replacements without prior approval, and we have been waiting abatement since for just about 18 months. And now the court has ordered that abatement must occur, which would be the filing of the application. And I believe in conversation, the city attorney and I were having discussions about whether we need to have a more of a hammer, I guess, for infractions that occur without the permit, because then it makes people have to really consider the risk, if there's a risk, and really submit to the application process prior to making any changes to their historic properties.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember, this is 34 Dean Street?
I believe it was 31.
31? Okay. Yes, and we did, with your advice, strengthen the wording in our rules of procedure regarding after the fact applications, so that it has the full effect of the law. And we can continue having in more conversations if we think that's necessary. We have had pretty good luck getting most applicants to come to an application after the fact, and then we do review it based as if it was a brand new application. Of course, there's very glaring examples where that is not the case. So it's an ongoing discussion. Okay, anything else on violations? Okay, next on the agenda is consent docket. The consent docket is a procedure designed to expedite certain applications before the commission. In order to be considered, the application must receive recommendation for approval or approval with minor conditions from all city staff, commission, and commission technical advisors. Also, there needs to be no public opposition to the application. If an application is approved on the consent docket, the applicant does not need to testify further and is free to leave the meeting. Please remember you must obtain the necessary permits prior to commencing work, and please remove the posting signs as promptly. The following application is eligible for the consent docket: 130 Prince George Street. I believe there are two small conditions on the application. Roberta, would you read those conditions for me? I'm going back and trying to find them. I know one had to do with archaeological.
That's okay, I have it.
Okay. Thanks.
The applicant shall complete all aspects of the archaeological treatment plan, including related testing, excavation, monitoring, and reporting in accordance with MHT easement requirements. The second is the applicant standard clause. The applicant
Yeah.
shall submit an HPC revision form for staff review and approval of all exterior changes not specifically approved with this application.
Okay. Can we cue Laura Smith if you would take yourself off of And do you accept those conditions, Laura?
I do accept those conditions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll take a motion to accept the consent docket.
May I
move
make
that
a
we-
comment before we do that?
Sure.
I'd just like to thank the applicant for continuing to work so successfully with the city. This is a wonderful treasure, and it's one of my favorite buildings in town. So I appreciate it being used continuously and preserved so well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve the application for 130 Prince George Street based on the fact that it is consistent with the guidelines mentioned in the staff report, and the applicant has agreed to the 2 conditions that were placed on the application.
Second,
Second.
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Abstain? All right, it passes. Thank you. And I too would like to echo what Will said, Laura. You know how important this building is to me since my ancestor built it. So I really appreciate what you've worked with all the city departments. And I know you and Roberta have worked very hard on this together. So again, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your time. We appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Yes, we thank you for working so cooperatively with the city, because there were a lot of departments involved and a lot of work needed for changes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks. Okay. Next item on the agenda is new business. First item is 150 South Street. And Jeff Huntington with Future History Now is with us. So Jeff, if you would like to take a few minutes to describe your project, and then we'll take any, we'll comment on the public comment, and then we will have a conversation. There you are. Hi.
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 So 156 South Street is one mural in part of the Kids Making History mural tour, and it depicts an image of Thurgood Marshall and Ruth Bader Ginsburg covering the full scale of the wall in a monochrome palette and a very minimal design. So there's very little in there to some of our other murals involve more abstract geometric patterns and such. And this one is just monochrome and toned down so that it is more harmonious with the historic surroundings around there. And we just wanted to highlight the portraits themselves.
Yeah, it's more of just a traditional portrait or portraits.
Mm-hmm. And the work would be a collaboration with our youth at Future History Now. So there'll be local youth, volunteers and teaching artists involved in the process. And it will be accompanied with a virtual docent in the form of a QR code. And that the museum guide, the virtual museum guide, will be voiced by the youth that work on this project.
Okay, great. Appreciate that. Any questions from commissioners before I move to public? Bill?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, did she ever come to Annapolis or have anything to do within the city itself? I asked that because Thurgood Marshall was
Clearly.
a
Yes.
historic figure within the city. We're in the
Yeah.
historic area of the city. And I think we talked about this on some of the other ones. Everybody had some relevance to the city itself. And as much as I admire Ruth Bader Ginsburg, does she have a relevance to the city?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. I don't.
I
That
love the image. I love the
For
idea.
us,
It's just
for us, that
question
was.
the historic nature.
I'm sorry.
I said I love the image. I love the situation and all it tells, but I have a question on the historic nature that
Mhm.
relevant to the city and the area it's in.
Well, I mean, the only relevance to the area it's in, I guess, is that it's by the courthouse and would be seen from the courthouse. So
Yeah.
I mean,
And
that was,
And I can
so
understand that.
so there's currently nine murals on the KMH walking tour, Kids Making History. 6 of them are based in local history, very specific to the piece of concrete that the mural sits on. The 3 that are not are more based in national American figures, such as the President's Hill, Thurgood Marshall, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and John Lewis, which we just finished recently. And we don't have specific criteria that every single mural has to be about an Annapolitan or somebody who has had something specifically to do with Annapolis. But these murals are just a way for our youth to be engaged in history, and we try to find connections and relevance, like Julia was saying. The justices are placed on that wall specifically because how the wall is angled toward the window of the courthouse.
And I understand your concept, and I guess I'm questioning as much as the historic. Again, we're in a historic area. Everything is based on the history of Annapolis and historic district.
I'll tell you what, Bill,
What-
why don't we take that up in
What-
deliberations? Why don't we have a conversation about that in deliberations? Is that okay?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies.
No apology. It's just something we need to discuss among ourselves. Yeah.
Or question.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions for the commissioners? Okay, we do have some public comments which are in the record, and they are generally supported, as Will said. The one condition which did occur was the interest on the part of the Heritage Commission to review the final verbiage of the audio component. This is an interesting application because it has audio components to it. So the Heritage Commission was supportive of this application with that minor exception. The Historic Annapolis also commented and was supportive because it is on a non-contributing side elevation, and they're interested in it having a not to infringe on the pedestrian component of the streetscape. And they did register some interest or some desire to modify it so that it was scaled down to read as an independent element or a framed object. So we can discuss that in our deliberations. Then third, the Genevieve Torrey from the Annapolis Arts and Public Places commissioner did also register comments in support of this project, and it is their opinion they would like people to experience authentic reaction to public art as it engages the community and explores themselves and the surroundings. So I encourage the commissioners to read these comments if you haven't read them already. But in general, they are in support of the application with the exception of some qualifications on the part of Historic Annapolis, which we might want to have a little bit of discussion about. Okay. So those will be included in the record as exhibits. All right. So that's the public comment section of our agenda. I'll close that at this point and turn it over to commissioners for deliberations. Bill raised a point a minute ago that should we be talking more about the content of a mural as regards to its historic nature or not. Bill, you weren't necessarily on the commission earlier when we went through discussions about this, and our guidelines don't point directly to affecting content, but we do have the ability to provide guidance on whether it detracts from the historic nature of a streetscape, of a significant streetscape. So,
And to that note, Tim, did you want a staff report?
Sorry.
So pleasantly
I love
framed.
the image. I like Ruth Bader. Thurgood
No,
Marshall.
well, I skipped
Here.
over staff report, Bill, so let me go back. I apologize. Staff report, please, before,
Okay,
for,
so I'll try to be quick. The building at 156 South Street is considered non-contributing, and therefore we're considering the effect on surrounding landmarks, sites, and structures using a strict standard of review. So the building seen today didn't exist on the 1930 Sanborn map, where instead a duplex was shown among a street of residential dwellings. And it was all residences between that building, which was duplexes, and the other side where the courthouse is today, all the way down to Cathedral. So since that time, the block has become much more commercial and governmental, including this non-contributing building and other offices and the courthouse annex. And we estimate construction of the building somewhere around 1950. So since the building seen today didn't exist then, the mural, we feel, doesn't diminish the significance of the surrounding area. And the alteration covers, but it doesn't destroy features of the building. Therefore, the portrait mural is not considered detrimental to its immediate neighborhood, according to staff. And the painting of Thurgood Marshall, along with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, provide, in staff's view, a fitting location for the relevant and current theme of equal justice under law. Very current in our political climate today. The Heritage Commission, as Tim said, did request a copy of the explanatory video that'll be produced later and accessed via the QR code. And the window on the wall will be painted to match the background of the mural and essentially disappear. We are only left with the condition, which I had originally written to state that the owner would agree to maintain, but the owner is not agreeing, so the commission can discuss along with Jeff and Julia a possible change that I'm suggesting, where the applicant of 156 South Street agrees to provide routine maintenance as required, not including earthquakes over its approximate 11-year span. And I would urge the commission to use caution in the deliberations regarding content. That's all. Thank you. David.
May I comment?
you have a question for staff, and then we can go into deliberations. But you have a question for staff?
No, but my comment, no, I don't have a question. But my comment relates directly to the staff report.
Go for it. Oh, then let's deliberate. Can we move into deliberations then?
Fine by me.
Okay, let's move into deliberations.
Okay. Two things. Bill raises an interesting point, which I think is one that we should consider, but seeing that more than half of Americans are female, and most of Justice Ginsburg's famous activities, more influential activities, were to increase women's rights and opportunities, I can't think of a more appropriate person to be placed so close to our courthouse. And given what Ms. Lehner just said, I think all of these public comments are very valuable to us and help us form our opinions. But they seem to be about things that I'm not familiar with any guideline that directs us to take authority or consider. And that's one reason why I suggested that this be on the consent docket. I do not think we appropriately go into things like allowing the different commissions to review and weigh in on the content of the virtual docenting and such things as that. And I'm very leery of entering, heading in that direction. Thank you.
If I could just comment on the Heritage Commission, they simply wanted to review it for historic accuracy.
Oh, I'm happy to have them do that. I just don't want us to take any
Okay,
position
correct.
other than saying, yes, let's share and involve
Okay.
the community.
So just devil's advocate, the wall is appropriate for a mural. Someone else wants to put another mural on there that we may not, or even the public in general may not agree with its content. Do we then approve it?
I don't
Is
see
it
what
then just-
authority we have to disapprove. What authority do we have to disapprove it?
Oh,
Well, I'm not trying to argue. Like I say, I
No,
like,
I'm not
I like
arguing.
representation.
yeah, I think what we,
Well, I guess my question is, do we have a responsibility within the historic district to look at the historic relevance of a mural? And that relevance being relevant to the district rather than the nation.
I don't think so, but I'm
to
open to being
agency.
educated because I have limited experience in this area.
I would say that we would need to look to a
I'm just asking
guideline.
the question.
No, it's a good question. It's a valid. That's why I wanted to have this discussion.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's a
it's
valid
important if we Bill, the way we reviewed this in the past, and we have looked at murals over the last 7 to 8 years, and if we are interested and we won a court case that made sure that murals did come in the historic district, were brought to the historic district, and we appreciate the fact that applicants do bring them to us, but we need to be able to point to a specific guideline that would discuss anything to do with historic relevance, and so we can have a discussion going forward if we want to add or change our guidelines. I would always want to do that in conjunction with the arts community and engage art in public places, for instance, and the public in any change in that regard. But right now, our guidelines focus on, detract any kind of detrimental effect to the historic resource itself, or on the nature of the streetscape. So there's open discussion there.
So for now, it's painting a building.
Actually, it's an art object. It's not. It is distinct.
I understand, but
there
I
are two
understand,
different.
but as far as the guidelines are concerned, we do
Actually,
not question.
Right. As far as the guidelines concerned, we don't have any guidelines that manage that now. There are perhaps other codes that manage any kind of, perhaps, just again playing devil's advocate, hate speech being put on a public billboard of some sort. That's not something we would get involved in, but I believe that there are other. That's an extreme example, but I think we're going to be seeing several murals over the next few years from groups like Future History Now, and I think I agree with, I personally agree with what Art in Public Places is doing in education, and I think Future History Now, getting kids involved in history is so, here I am on my little opinions, but so important to our future.
And if I can
say, I'm not against what they're doing. I'm not against the image. It's the question of the guidelines. What guidelines are we following? so that future people coming down the road know, here's the guidelines, this is the barriers, and
Yes.
in the future, we have an idea of what
Yeah.
we actually can do.
Yeah, and I think to Will's point originally, the staff report is very well written in this particular regard, and Roberta went out of her way to say we should cautiously consider any these guidelines when we talk about murals.
To
And
try and continue-
every guideline that is applicable has been included in the report.
Okay.
Kim?
Can I,
Kim,
yeah,
Oh,
come
no,
in?
Kim wants to say something.
I'm listening to Bill, and I think his comments are good, or thoughtful. I know they're good, and I think they're also relevant, because we have some amazing history in Annapolis and Maryland with Thurgood Marshall. I mean, that's why we named our airport after them, right? So I mean, I think there are, a lot of historic sites that, pull in major figures. And I do truly believe Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a truly important person, and a unique person. But but Thurgood Marshall is so local and so important, and the things he did here were so relevant nationally. I know Bill's concern is that maybe that will get buried. Is that what I'm hearing, Bill?
Not so much get buried. I'm talking more of local relevance. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg has local relevance in that she is a huge national figure. No one can deny that. Her importance in history is equal to Thurgood Marshall, at least. We'll see how in 50 years they compare the two. They may be on the same par. One may be above or after the other. They are people to aspire to as individuals. My question is local relevance in that Thurgood Marshall was here. Thurgood Marshall was at the State House. Thurgood Marshall. And I don't know, maybe there's a restaurant downtown that Ruth Bader came down and visited one Saturday. I don't know.
Well, I think back to what, but if we want to have continuing discussions about that and adding something, I would, again, engage Art in Public Places has a role in this. This doesn't happen to be on a public building, and I've learned quite a bit, but potentially they will be partially funding this project. Maybe I can ask Jeff real quickly if I think that was a potential funder. And therefore they should be, in my opinion, right now it is within their purview and they're in their code to discuss this topic. But right now it's not in ours. Not to say we can't continue to have discussions in the future, but I would always engage others in that discussion regarding content.
I think it's a good point, and
it's a valid point. I think that the other point we shouldn't lose is that if this was being done in a primary facade of a contributing building, we would have very strong opinions. Not opinions. We would have within our guidelines. We would have
more tools.
Correct. Yes, but it's not. Okay, Bobby, you haven't really chimed in yet. Any additional thoughts?
You haven't seen me nodding?
Okay. No, so unfortunately that doesn't enter the record.
I mean, basically I'm of pretty much the opinion that seems to be out there that it's our job to assess whether the mural should go on the building. What the content of that mural is, we can have an opinion and we should feel free to express it and engage in a dialogue, but it isn't within our guidelines. It is, however, under the purview of other organizations like Art in Public Places, And hopefully the public will weigh in as well. If they, I don't know if they have already or not. And also the applicants who are proposing to put it on there. I mean, I think there should be a lively discussion about what the content of the mural is. But our role is to simply, using the guidelines that we have, assess whether that mural can go on that building.
Well said.
Well said. Okay. Then I'll close deliberation and I will, I'll take a motion, but we have modified the one of the conditions. So Bobby, if you make
Right,
a
yeah,
motion.
I've got it.
Okay.
I move that we accept that we approve the application for 156 South Street, based on the fact that it complies with guidelines B1 and D1, the Secretary of the Interior Standards 1, 2, 5, and 9, but it does have a condition that the applicant for the mural at 156 South Street agrees to maintain the mural over its approximate 11-year lifespan.
With routine, a friendly amendment, routine maintenance
Routine maintenance,
As
yeah.
needed.
as required.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Second.
I will, okay, I'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
All abstain? And then before Tammy tells me, how many people made site visits to this project? I did.
I did.
I did.
Kim did. Looked like everybody did
So
there.
did.
Tammy. And we will accept the following exhibits into the record. Exhibit C1 is the public hearing application dated 9/22. Exhibit C2 is the revised application dated 10/12. Exhibit C3 is the staff report and recommendation dated 11/3/2020. Exhibit C4 is Robert Worden's public comments dated 11/9, representing the Heritage Commission. Exhibit number C5 is Karen Timer Brown's comments from Historic Annapolis dated 11/6/2020. And exhibit C6 is Genevieve Torrey's Art and Public Places Commission email dated 11/10/2020. Okay. Tammy, did I get it all? All right, I'll take,
What's going on?
You did. I'm sorry. I couldn't get it unmuted. You did. Thank you.
all right, thank you, Tammy. All right. All right, thank you very much and look forward to seeing the project, and the John Lewis one looks great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna put it away, but if she wants, it's here.
Okay, next item on the agenda is new business 196 Main Street. Dylan, would you like to present to us, and then we can have some questions and discussion.
Yeah, I don't have much. I'm going to turn it over to my boss over here, Senator. But I just want to give a huge thank you to John, Roberta, and Sherry for helping us through the whole process. And with that, I'll turn it over to Senator Elford.
Thank you, Dylan. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Dylan for doing a lot of the legwork on this project. But again, Roberta, Sherry, and John have just been so incredibly helpful through this process. This is my first time before you, even though Tim and I are neighbors, and obviously Will and I go way back, and I live in downtown. It's my first time through the HPC process, and I greatly appreciate how solutions oriented the staff has been throughout this whole project. So I'll be very brief. This is a project that's near and dear to my heart, as we are in the midst of the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage here in the United States. We wanted to make sure we are commemorating that, not just in the State House, where we have the largest class of women in the history of Maryland right now in 2020, which is very exciting. We also want to make sure that we're representing that history publicly as well. And so we've been working with Maryland State Archives, and they were the ones that actually found this beautiful photo that I believe you have in front of you of the Army of the Severn. So local women from Anne Arundel County and the surrounding area who came to the State House on the State House steps in 1914 advocating for suffrage. And this has been a truly collaborative effort with Downtown Annapolis Partnership, with the City of Annapolis, with the two property owners that this would impact, both Jerry and Andrew, who have been incredibly cooperative. I pass this site on my way to work at the State House every day. And right now it's a pretty unattractive wall that's in need of some paint and some love. And so this is a perfect solution all around, where Jerry and Andrew are teaming up to repaint that wall. Andrew is building a small fence to kind of block the ugly air conditioning units, and the state is stepping up and helping to pay for this beautiful mural with the interpretation that talks about it being local, that talks about the little known but lesser known fact that Maryland actually did not ratify the 19th Amendment for quite some time after the rest of the country did. But it's a labor of love, if you can't tell, my passion for this project. And I'm just, again, so grateful for your consideration of this. And it is, shovel ready at this point. Andrew has been incredibly helpful with providing a manufacturer that he's worked with and has trust in. The whole thing, I believe you have the measurements, but it's 11.5 feet by 3.5 feet. It's kind of an oddly shaped photograph, but it's actually a pretty interesting image, panoramic view, right? And so I think it's going to be a great addition to the State House Circle, to State Circle, and all of my colleagues I know will appreciate it when they are our temporary neighbors for the 90 days of the legislative session. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but again, thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Sarah? All right. Staff report, please.
Okay. So the building facing 14 State Circle is a non-contributing addition to the building at 196 Main. So it goes all the way from Main to State Circle. But the portion facing State Circle came later, and it's not shown on the 1930 Sanborn map, but it does eventually show up on the 1959 Sanborn pay stubs. So therefore, we're considering the effect on surrounding landmarks and sites and structures using a strict standard of review. And staff considers it consistent with the guidelines. The photograph represents an issue relevant to the State House right across the street. And staff feels that the photograph does not diminish the significance of the surrounding area. The alteration covers but doesn't destroy features of the building. And Andrew Fox is the owner, as Senator Elfreth mentioned, of 25 State Circle next door. And as she mentioned, he will be cooperating in the installation of this. He's going to repair the stuccoed wall, and his graphics art contractor will manufacture the photo and the label. By the way, the outdoor unit for the heating and air was removed today. All that's going on the side of the building, but there will be a fence so that folks don't fall into the alleyway. And Andrew is making sure that the fence doesn't cover the mural in any way. So he's heavily involved in exactly where the photograph will be placed. We do have letters from the owners of both buildings, both 14 State Circle and 25 State Circle, in support of the project and also offering to maintain and ensure the art. So we are left with the final piece to actually complete, and that is the draft of the text. And we've been working on that for a couple of weeks now. And that was added to your folders later in the afternoon today. So a full historic description of the art was very kindly provided by the Maryland State Archives, specifically Elaine Rice Bachman, to accompany the photograph, but that history was needed to be reduced so it could be seen. And it was reduced and approved by the Heritage Commission in their meeting last week. They reviewed it and couldn't quite come to a consensus. So then I worked on it, and it was emailed back and forth. And we have a final agreement from them today, as well as from the senator. And we just need a final approval from Maryland State Archives. And the label will not be installed on the wall as shown in your application, because it really just couldn't be seen. So it will be created more as more of a plaque, and will be placed on the the metal fence that fronts State Circle. So it will be placed over at the corner of that fence closest to the photograph. And so hopefully you've been able to access that in your folder.
Yep.
I did include a very small image of the photograph, just to keep the text looking less boring on the fence there, so that
I think it makes sense.
so that you can see what are we talking about, and then you can look up and see the real thing. So I did add a condition, simply that the final text will be reviewed and approved by staff, and Andrew is going to submit all the specifications of the text as in its state as a plaque to staff. That's all. And I do want to give John Tower, if he's present, an opportunity to comment if you want to. And I apologize, I didn't mention that in the last application, but I know you can. I know you're willing to pipe in no matter any time. But I'm giving you that opportunity now, if you like.
I think that this is going to be a wonderful addition to State Circle. Certainly relevant for Maryland, absolutely relevant for the place. And Andrew Fox has really been an amazing help. So pat yourselves on the back, commissioners, for approving his project, because it's really going to add something to the State Circle streetscape, and the fence that he has constructed, which is awfully nice, is now going to be the place for the plaque. And he very generously allowed that to happen today. In fact, it was his suggestion so that people could read about the picture. So I think it's worked out very nicely.
Great.
I should also mention that as you walk down the street, the street goes down, and so at that point the fence is at eye level, and so it's perfect location for actually reading the plaque.
Roberta, if I could add, and John, thank you so much for your work on this. It's also thematically fits in with Andrew's vision for that part of the restaurant. Apparently it's a 1920s theme. So this whole thing kind of very, very perfectly together, reflecting right across the street from the State House. It's a great fit. So thank you.
Oh, great. Okay. We did receive public comment, and I have to say, again, I cannot wait until we can have live public comment. But we received public comment from Historic Annapolis in support of this project, and from Arts and Public Places also in support, and finally from the Heritage Commission. And Roberta commented on the discussion back and forth about the wording, and they're responsible for the wording and making sure it's historically accurate. And that is well under review, and there'll be, I think, one final iteration will be a part of the condition for the application. So that's the public comment component of this application. All right, I'll close public comment and open it up to commissioners' deliberations. comments? Yeah, Will?
I'd like to just compliment the senator for discovering this and bringing it forward, and Dylan for shepherding it through. And I believe that I've heard something about a change in the senator's office that is only another testament to Dylan's good work. Is that true?
Yes, Dylan is now chief of staff to our wonderful team. So
Congratulations.
And I live in the historic district now too, as well.
Yeah. Well, I fully support this application.
We're always looking for new commissioners, Dylan, but I'm afraid you can't be a commissioner. I just one quick comment. I completely support this application because it meets our guidelines. It is, I would say, a more important view shed. And so I just, compared to the last one, I would review this with a lot more strict in terms of, strictly in terms of detrimental impact or detracting from its site. And so this is where we get into our guidelines and say, okay, it does not have a detrimental impact, but this is a very important view. So the two murals we're comparing here are not the same. And like I always say, every application stands on its own and you cannot always generalize. And the relevance of the material is good, but it's not the important part of this application. So I just wanted to state that, and that's my opinion. I completely approve or agree with the staff report and support the application. Bobby, comment?
Basically what you just said.
Okay. Bill?
I think it'll be a great addition to the circle. I think it's perfectly placed based on its content. I'm intrigued to hear that it will fit in with the 1920s theme that's going on in the area there. And I think that if the draft wording ends up being used and mothers take their daughters to read the plaque, there will be some very interesting dialogue about why it took Maryland so long to ratify the amendment when it was passed. So
I should mention that there was a point at which, and in the staff report, you will see that our consulting architect suggested perhaps just a title for it and not any text. But that was mostly because you couldn't see or read it from that distance. And it was very important for Senator Elfreth to be able to have an explanation, including how long it took Maryland to ratify. I'll let the senator expand on that if you want.
I just think it speaks to how far we've come. So.
Yeah.
To that point, did anybody hear the piece, I think Sunday, it ran on NPR, and it was about how Tennessee became the 39th state to ratify and made it law? Fascinating program.
Yeah.
Took a letter from a young legislator's mother to change his vote and put it over the top.
There you go. Listen to mom.
Listen to mom. Bill, you have any additional thoughts and deliberations?
No, I talked myself out on the last one.
Okay, good enough. Kim, thoughts?
Tim, I'm in agreement.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, of course I am too. All right, I'll close deliberations now and I'll go in the proper sequence. Who did a site visit to this guy today? I did it today.
Not
It's
today.
remarkable. It's much smaller than
today,
actually it looks in pictures. Well, not today.
I did.
Okay, great. And then exhibit listings. Exhibit C1 is the the hearing application dated 9/28. C2 is the revision to the application dated 10/13 with its attachments. C3 is a letter from John Pica, which is undated, but in support of the application. C4 is the staff report dated 11/3/2020. C5 is the what we believe to be the final wording of the Army of the Severn the suffrage movement dated 11/10. C6 is Robert Warden's public comments for the Heritage Commission dated 11/9. And C7 is Karen Timer Brown for Historic Annapolis, comments dated 11/6. Just check with Tammy. How is that, Tammy?
That's good. But who went on this site visit? I didn't catch.
Oh, I'm sorry, we all raised our hands.
All of us, yeah.
Let's see, Kim, did you do a site visit?
Yes.
Yes, so everyone has one. Like I said, I went by today just one more time, and it's actually quite a compact site.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll take a motion, please.
I move that we approve the application for the mural at 196 Main Street, also known as 14 State Circle, because it is consistent with guidelines, B1, D1, Secretary of the Interior Standards 1, 2, 5, and 9, with the following condition. The text, material, and location of the label for the panoramic photograph shall be reviewed and approved by staff.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, passed unanimously. Thank you very much, and look forward to it. All right, thanks very much, and we'll see you soon. Okay, next on the agenda is our administrative business. We have two items. Briefly, our administrative approvals issued were included on your drive. This is informational and doesn't require approval or a vote at all. But again, I always say this, look at all the things that are being done by Roberta and John on a workmanlike fashion and keeping us on the straight and narrow. The second one, if you have a chance, is the 2020 annual report. Roberta included on the drive an example of last year's report. I'd like, you may or may not have had a chance to take a look at it, but please do take a look at it on the drive. If you have any, it has a set format in terms of its headings, but the content under the headings is up to Roberta primarily to draft. And if you have any thoughts about things that you would include for this last momentous year, Roberta and I briefly talked. The number one highlight is how things changed for us in March, and this virtual meetings are a pretty good example of that. And so take a look at it. You'll get a flavor for it. And if you have any thoughts, please forward that on to Roberta. And she'll be drafting that right after the new year. It's due during the month of January for the year of 2020. Okay, any other business for the good of the order? Yes, Will?
Tim, thank you for insisting that those two murals be included for discussion. I think they were very productive discussions.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. We are going to be seeing more murals, and we need to take a look at them. And it prompted me to engage more closely the Art in Public Places folks. One of the things that I miss about our current environment is I would have conversations at other meetings, particularly planning meetings, the comprehensive planning meetings. I got to meet other commissioners and other chairmen, and those are the kind of discussions we just aren't able to have. And I think that's important. And so I appreciate that. The only other business I have is I did drive around today, and I want to again thank Roberta and Sally Nash for putting forward guidelines regarding winter tents. We had a conversation at the end of one of our last meetings about just the visual clutter that accumulated over the summer. My view is it is improved, and first of all, there's been just a general reduction in clutter, but specifically, people seem to be following the aesthetic guidelines that Roberta helped draft and put into the planning office, planning and zoning, issued guidelines regarding winter tents. And they included, they should be white or with clear sides, and any beer advertisements or any advertisements regarding anything but the institution or the establishment should be on the inside of the tent. So that was one of our biggest problems, was just the proliferation of advertising, which was all paid for by the breweries and the distributors. And I get that. Everyone needs help. But I think it's had a positive impact already. Compliance will be a challenge. There are other guidelines regarding heating and life safety that are also important and are included in the guidelines that were issued. I did meet and discuss those with the mayor. We had coffee about 2 weeks ago, and I pointed to the guidelines and appreciated his appreciated his support of staff in trying to enforce them. So that's just a report out on that from our last meeting.
And I would like to add that John Tower participated as well.
Oh, of course. Sorry, John.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yes.
It's all for the good of the city, and it
Yes.
looks so much better.
It already looks better, and I hope we have continued days like this all winter.
Gorgeous all week.
Yes, it has been. All right. In that case, anything else? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I
All in
second.
favor? Aye.